What's up, everybody? Today we are making our first video for yet another Zombie Survivors. Normally we make videos for yet another Zombie Defense on this channel, but this is our first one for Survivors, and we are ranking every weapon in the game. The game came out about 2 weeks ago. They just had their first big balance update, so now is the perfect time. Please tell me how stupid I am in the comments, or if you actually like what I'm saying. YouTube has a button for that too. Anyway, let's get into it. First weapon on the list, the syringe gun. The syringe gun is the second gun you get from the medic, so it's not the handgun that she starts with, and it's not her final gun that she gets in her third rank. The syringe gun is your perfect example of a good idea with poor execution, because the idea of the syringe gun and a couple of the guns from the medic is that they deal damage over time. However, in a game like this, you want to deal damage quickly. You need to eliminate the zombies quickly. So when you're later in an endless mode and you're around 25-30 minutes, you don't really have time to do damage per second on a zombie. I mean, maybe on a boss that's helpful, but I think it's borderline useless unless it's a lot of damage, but then it's kind of OP. So I don't really know how you do that, but unfortunately, like I said, the syringe gun, damage over time, and not a lot of damage over time, and worst of all, that damage does not stack with critical hits. So if you have a high critical percentage or a high critical damage boost, doesn't matter. It matters for the initial shot of the gun, but not for the damage over time. So coming in last in the E tier, syringe gun. And coming up next, freezing flask. Another weapon from the medic, and this is one of her third rank weapons. It's a flask that she can throw that both deals damage and freezes the zombies. But unfortunately in this game, the freezing is just bad. I don't know, it doesn't work well. Like, it does freeze zombies, and it does allow you to gain some distance, I guess, but wouldn't you rather kill the zombies? And I guess you can make a build where you have her freezing zombies, and it makes it easier for other survivors to kill those zombies, but you just rather would do damage unless the freezing was stronger. I think maybe the freezing could be boosted just a little bit, because clearly if it's boosted too much or if it's buffed too much, it would be too powerful. So I don't blame the developers. These weapons seem like they'd be really hard to balance, and they're great ideas. I'm sure they'll figure it out eventually, but for right now, freezing flask, not very good. Speaking of flasks, after the freezing flask comes the antidote flask, which is just an upgraded AoE version of the syringe gun. And she throws a flask, it explodes, it does damage over time. But just like the last two weapons, it does not deal any critical damage after that initial blow, and the damage per second, I mean, I believe it's better than the syringe gun. I always have a better average DPS from that than I do from the syringe gun, but it's not much more. And then finally, in the final tier, we have the first weapon, I should say, from the medic. The handgun is the gun that the medic starts with when she starts a run, or when you select her as one of your second or third survivors. And the handgun is actually not too bad, mainly because unlike all of her other weapons, all of the bullets are affected by critical percentage and critical damage. So if you have a build with Ghost, where you're using the Protocol Critical and you're getting the 50% critical chance, or maybe you're using Eagle Eye with the Huntress and you have a high critical percentage, then the handgun's actually not too bad, because I think she fires off 9 rounds before she has to reload. It's just like the SWAT's pistol, but a little bit weaker. So she can still get criticals. Those criticals will do way more damage than any of her other weapons could possibly do. So my recommendation, if you're playing with the medic, is probably just keep her using the handgun. Maybe banish. Oh, you can't banish it because, I don't know. I would keep the handgun. It's going to do more damage than the rest, and that way you get to keep the other benefits of having the medic, because the medic is really strong. The medic allows you to have the PhD skill, which is a health regeneration per second. She has the lifesteal ability. So she's somebody that you do want on your team. The medic's not bad. She's just so valuable at times that I guess her guns, they can't be too powerful, because then she would be too powerful. Anyway, I digress, and we move on to the next tier and get away from the medic and move on to the Huntress, the Freezing Arrow. Now, the Freezing Arrow struggles from the same thing that the Freezing Flask struggled from, in that the freezing is just not very good. It's a cool idea, and I'm sure you can make some cool builds with it, especially later on when you know, there's more abilities and there's more survivors and there's things you can combine with one another. But for right now, you would just rather have the damage that you could get elsewhere, because the Huntress has better alternatives. The Freezing Arrow, it looks cool, it does freeze the zombies, it does do damage, it's not as bad as the medic's weapons, it's not useless, but it's not very good. Coming up after that, we have the SMG from SWAT. So the SMG is the second weapon you would get as SWAT, and so it's not the final one, so you know, it really shouldn't be an A tier weapon. So the fact that we're putting it on the list and we have it as D tier is a compliment to it. It's got a high fire rate, you know, so it benefits well from critical damage. I think everybody pretty much knows what the SMG is. It's pretty good. After that, we have another secondary weapon, this one for the Engineer. We have the Tesla. The Tesla is pretty good because, or what I like about it, is that it affects multiple zombies. So while the damage is maybe lower than other secondary weapons, like the SMG that we just talked about, the Tesla is like a chain lightning that hits multiple zombies. So it's really good at crowd control. It can hit a boss zombie and another zombie, so it's a good early game weapon to kind of help with that crowd control once the zombies begin to get overwhelming, you know. So after that, believe it or not, we have our first rank 3 weapon that's not from the medic. We have the rocket launcher, which is from the tank, and it's one of the final upgraded weapons you can get from the tank. Now, the rocket launcher is good. It's not bad. In fact, sometimes it can perform really, really well. The reason that I don't like it very much is because it's a single shot weapon, meaning that sometimes that rocket just goes sailing past. It doesn't hit the zombie because the auto aim has the survivor turning so fast that they switch targets in between and the rocket shoots by. You hit nobody with the rocket, you only get 3, then you have to reload. If you just hit one normal zombie and that blast radius doesn't kill any other zombies, then maybe you should have just shot a bullet from an SMG, really, right? It's the rocket launcher has its moments. It can blow somebody up, it can take out a lot of zombies that are huddled up together, but that doesn't always happen. It'll happen a lot at the end, but I'd rather get to the end, you know? So the rocket launcher, I feel like it's a fun weapon to use. It just has a few limitations that hold it back, unfortunately. After that, we have another tank weapon. We have the pump action shotgun, which is actually the rank 2 weapon, and I actually think it's better than the rocket launcher, because it's a good crowd control weapon. It's got that spread, it can hit multiple zombies. All of those bullets are affected by the critical percentage and the critical damage. If a zombie is up close, like a boss zombie is right in your face, they take all of those and they can hit multiple bullets at once, so it can also shred through some bosses pretty quickly, especially the first couple that you see. And I actually get an average higher DPS from it than I do from the rocket launcher. I think the rocket launcher is going to beat it in certain situations, but the pump action shotgun, for being a rank 2 weapon, is actually really good. After that, we have the blaster from the Engineer. The blaster is, you can almost copy and paste everything I said about the rocket launcher. It's very similar. It shoots single fire bullets, and because of the auto aim, you can end up missing completely, and then you have to reload, and then you just kind of wish you just shot them with a normal bullet from something that shoots faster. But the cool thing about the blaster is it actually the bullet will deal damage to zombies as it passes them, even if it doesn't hit them. So that's a cool thing that the rocket launcher can't do. And I always get a pretty high average DPS from the blaster, to be honest. It seems like a good weapon. It's just the eye test. When you see it and you see those bullets going past the zombies, it doesn't doesn't always sit well with you, you know? So after that, we have the explosive arrows from the Huntress. The explosive arrows they would have the same drawbacks as the rocket launcher. They would be similar to the rocket launcher and the blaster, but they shoot multiple arrows, and so she actually has a much better chance of landing multiple arrows on the zombies and actually having them explode, actually having those blast radiuses affect multiple zombies. So I think the explosive arrows actually significantly outperform both the rocket launcher, and I don't know if I'd say significantly the blaster, but noticeably better, I would say. I think you get more impact out of those explosions, and they recently just buffed the Huntress. Her auto aim is better, and the explosive arrows have a shorter time from when they blow up once they've made contact with the zombie. So theoretically, you should get more zombies affected from the blast radius. After that, we have the sniper rifle from the SWAT. It is one of the final upgrade choices you get with the SWAT. And the sniper rifle, unfortunately, has some of the same drawbacks that the rocket launcher and blaster have. But whereas the blaster and rocket launcher bullets move slowly, the sniper rifle is a sniper rifle. The bullet goes fast, so it doesn't always miss. I would say it rarely misses the way they do. And one cool thing about the sniper rifle is you can hit multiple zombies because it will penetrate and go through. So if they are lined up and you can do a line, you can get, several zombies in a row. And when they're bunched up, you get that multiple zombie streak, and it looks pretty cool. It feels pretty cool. The sniper rifle always has a high average DPS. I think, usually around, I don't have it right in front of me, it's usually around 900, maybe a little bit lower. So it's very reliable. It's held back slightly just from its fire rate. So it's not great for crowd control, because yes, it can penetrate, but if you have zombies all around you, it's not a weapon that you could solo with. You would need support survivors around you, but it's not a bad weapon by any means. Pretty good for bosses. After that, we have the laser, which is very similar to the sniper rifle in a lot of ways, just better. It fires faster and hits more zombies. So it's a laser, so the fire rate is different, but it's a better fire rate. And in my experience, it deals more damage. Even though sometimes the DPS fluctuates very, very wildly. I've seen, a 600 DPS, like a 1400 DPS. So I'm not exactly sure where that variance comes from, and that's kind of what holds it back from being an A tier. If I could get that 1000 DPS on it every time, I would consider it an A tier weapon. Then we have the assault rifle, which is the other upgrade option for the final tier of the SWAT character, other than the sniper rifle. The assault rifle is just better than the sniper rifle because it fires fast. It has a much bigger magazine. It has a much faster fire rate, and when we mentioned earlier that the medic's weapons are not affected by the critical hit damage, the assault rifle is, and it fires very fast. So all of those bullets that you fire can have a 200% damage multiplier on them, and you really see that add up when you have that high critical chance. So when you have a critical chance of 50, 60, 70%, you're doing 200% damage with every bullet. I think the assault rifle has a 20 bullet magazine. It fires fast. Plus the SWAT has the increased fire rate. Or is it reload speed? I should really remember that. Either way, it's he can deal damage faster. Anyway, moving on to the next gun. We have the Wind Cutter, which is the first weapon from Ghost, which is the melee survivor. Very cool survivor. The Wind Cutter, when I first made this list, I actually had it as the best weapon. But then I played more with it, and I found that the DPS does fluctuate a little bit, and it's not as great for crowd control as I thought it was. It's not bad. It shoots out a big, wind burst in front of you and deals damage multiple times. So it can shred through bosses. It can take out a lot of zombies right in front of you. But it just doesn't have the crowd control that the next two guns on the list have, which is the only thing that holds it back, because it actually, in my experience, I think has the highest average DPS of any of the weapons on the list, including the next two, even consistently better than the next two. It's just the fact that it doesn't quite have that crowd control. So if you're by yourself, you can get swarmed a little bit easier than if you had the next two weapons on the list, which are, first, 1,000 Cuts, also from Ghost. Now, 1,000 Cuts is just a constant slash all around you. Ghost is just constantly slashing cuts all around you, and it's perfect for crowd control. Now, it's a perfect antithesis to the Wind Cutter. It's like the opposite, because the Wind Cutter shoots forward and can really melt through bosses, whereas 1,000 Cuts can really just fire all around you all the time and do a really good crowd control and keep the zombies from not swarming you. But it suffers slightly from not being able to tear through bosses the same way that the Wind Cutter can and the way that the next weapon on the list can. But it's very, very good. It really enables the Ghost to be able to solo things. I see a lot of people solo the hardcore mode with Ghost. So it's a very, very, very good solo weapon. And our final weapon on the list, the minigun from the tank. The minigun, you've heard me talk about critical percentage and critical damage this whole time. The minigun fires so fast. It has an outrageously large magazine. It takes a little bit of time to reload, but it's not too bad. What this means is that it fires so fast that even though it's firing in one direction, like the Wind Cutter, it melts through the zombies so quickly, and you'll see that tank constantly pivoting and turning because he can turn to different zombies so quickly and kill them. Also, when there's a boss zombie in front of him, he can just melt right through them because you can stand up right next to that boss zombie and focus your survivors on them. They're gone in seconds. You just melt right through them. So when you pair the minigun, the 1,000 Cuts, the Wind Cutter, the assault rifle, any of these top tier weapons with a high critical damage and a high critical chance, you just melt through the zombies. And the minigun, the reason it's number one on the list is it just takes advantage of that critical multiplier better than any of the other weapons, in my opinion. And now you may notice that we have no S tier weapons, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, you could shift this tier up. You can move like E to D, D to C, and whatnot, but I don't really know if there should be a lot of good S weapons in a game. That means they're a little too powerful, in my opinion. They're super, they're perfect. So I think this game is really, really well balanced because you have these great weapons. There is a meta, quote unquote. I can choose the minigun and 1,000 Cuts and try to do really well. But there are some interesting builds you can start with the explosive arrows, even the rocket launcher, the sniper rifle, and the blaster. And I think that in time they'll buff the medic weapons as well because they're really interesting, and I feel like it's a really cool idea. They just haven't quite executed just yet. But anyway, that's my list. I think the first ever tier list I've ever made. So I appreciate you for watching the video. Thank you, and let me know what you think.